What is going on this evening, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else? I am Connor on the Undercovers podcast alongside Paul and Ben up top on this absolutely glorious lead up week to the Indianapolis 500. We're all very excited about that. Well, I am. I don't know about Ben and Paul, but they seem pretty excited. But we got some pretty interesting topics to discuss tonight in the world of football. Yes, there is football still to be discussed because the schedule was just released not too long ago. So now you've got everybody drafting up records, predictions.
Yeah, every team right now is 17-0
Yep,
going into September, so
yep,
it's going to be a competitive playoffs to say the
yep.
least.
Yep, the Dolphins fans are already crowning themselves the AFC East champions before a snap of meaningful football has been played. But are we really surprised at this point?
No.
Uh, I'm not. I didn't think you would be either, Ben. I don't think you are, Paul. I don't think anybody is too surprised to hear me say that. But
Mhm.
what we'll do tonight to kick off the show is we will lead right into our quick takes as we usually do, and we're gonna start with you, Ben, because I know you've been very outspoken on this subject in the past. Should the Cincinnati Bengals extend T. Higgins? Yes, no, or trade him to the Bills.
Well, would have liked T. Higgins, but we don't need T. Higgins because we got Keon Coleman
That's
to
what's
fill
up.
that role. And we don't have to pay him 20 million. For Cincinnati, I know it's been a great duo with Chase and Burrow, and they added Burton, but could have. I know people think Burton was the whole Boyd replacement after they lost Boyd, but they also have Charlie Jones, who they drafted in either the fourth or fifth last year, and a guy who I was really high on myself for last year's draft, Andrea Yosevas, who's 6'4", runs in the 4.4s, and that guy is an absolute demon. And he actually produced a decent amount for a rookie. I mean, when you're behind Boyd, Higgins, and Chase, I mean, you're obviously going to get limited snaps. And then they also drafted Charlie Jones, who um, is good. But I mean, Yosevas, I think he had 3 or 4 touchdowns and like 100 something yards. So not bad. Better than Justin Shorter, who we drafted ahead of Yosevas, which I'm still not happy about, but whatever. Um, but if I'm Cincinnati, I'm looking at the makeup of the AFC. And yes, I know Miami, they've been good in the regular season, but what has their receiver duo really gotten them? And even look at San Francisco, it's gotten them to the Super Bowl, but in the Super Bowl, their receivers ultimately were kind of stopped, right? I mean, they drafted Ricky Pearsall. Um, Juwan Jennings was actually the number one receiver for San Fran in that game against Kansas City. So I think if you just look at how games are won, big games, I think receivers are important, but I think especially for Cincy, yes, they address the O line by signing Brown, drafting Mims too as development, but I think there's still other needs on defense. And if you're gonna tie up 20 million to receiver, one receiver, 25 million that is probably for Higgins, then you're gonna have to give 30 million plus to Chase. And
Oh boy.
50 plus million to receivers. I don't know. I mean, I know Philly's kind of doing it and they finagled some stuff, but if I'm Cincy, I think Burrow can still win with just Chase, Burton, and Yoshi. Maybe they draft another receiver too. I mean, I
Maybe.
would I would potentially run it back this year, one more year, and see if they can make a Super Bowl. But after that, I think you're gonna end up with just a comp pick. So I would probably see if you could still maybe move Higgins for like a 2, but if you can't, I would get the comp pick, which is likely going to result in a 3. So I'm not just saying this because I want the Bengals to get weaker, but just from a strategical standpoint, I think it's not unrealistic to say that Burton can replace Higgins. I'm not saying he can do what Higgins does, but I think he can give you about 900 to 1,000 yards, which is effectively what Higgins has given them every year for the past couple of years. He's also can stretch the defense more than Higgins could. So across from Chase, that's more of a dynamic 1-2 punch. And then you still have Yoshi, who can be a reliable red zone threat. And remember, they signed Mike Gesicki, who's not a great tight end, but he's
Oh,
a
that's right,
great
they
big
did.
slot. So even if they give,
Mhm.
even if say they did trade T. Higgins, you still have a reliable big guy in the red zone who has actually killed us on numerous occasions. He actually beat us last year when Gesicki, you know, caught it over Teron Johnson. Sorry, I didn't want to
Hey,
say that, Connor,
hey,
but
stop
it
it.
it is what it is. I mean, Gesicki is a good red zone threat. So, I mean, I think Cincy could still make it work and be a good team. I mean, they have other areas to address that they're going to have to pay Chase. I mean, you may as well bite the bullet now, even though I think you're a better team this year, obviously, if you still have a T. Higgins, but I don't know how much you regress. I mean, for the Bills, it's something the Bills are kind of doing, but on a greater scale is we're replacing the production of our top two receivers, and for Cincinnati, they only have to do that. Well, they have to replace Boyd as well, but
Mhm. Actually, no, I
they still have
I
Chase.
I
At the
got
end
you.
of the day, I mean, I personally would trade Higgins if I'm Cincinnati over paying him because I
Ooh,
believe Chase
okay.
is gonna be a top 5 receiver.
What, you mean he already isn't? Come on, Ben, we know he is. He's a
I
very
mean,
he is a top
he's a
tier wide receiver.
he's a borderline top 5 receiver right now, but I think this year he's gonna be a
I'd argue he
legitimate
is.
top 3, 5 receiver. I I'm saying he's gonna stamp his name. He's not just
Mhm.
gonna be in the conversation. When you talk about the best receivers in the NFL, you're gonna mention Jamar Chase. That's
Oh,
how
yeah,
good I think
for
Jamar
sure.
Chase is.
You know what?
And
I'm
I
gonna
don't think losing T. Higgins is really gonna have a significant impact because
no.
you added Burton, who was a borderline first round prospect. He probably could have been a first round pick if he didn't have the off the field character concerns.
Leave it to the Cincinnati Bengals to take a guy like that, but
Right. Joe
anyway,
Mixon, Vontez Burfict. They love those guys.
yeah, that's the big fun down there in Cincinnati. They don't like it when their prospects don't have a couple of question marks when it comes to off the field shenanigans. But, I'm going to be that guy that has to bring it up. You know what they're probably going to wind up doing if they trade T. Higgins? They're just going to roll with it this year, and then they're going to draft a wide receiver in the 2025 NFL draft.
Oh, I think they were yeah, they would do that either way.
Xavier Restrepo to the Cincinnati Bengals. Get him away
Yes.
from the Hurricanes and put him firmly in Cincinnati. You know what?
I mean,
That's
there's next year's receiver class. Like I don't want to get,
We're not
too ahead
harping
of it.
on this. I had to be the
Yeah.
guy because that's
And
just
I
the
don't want to get too ahead of ourselves because we haven't even got to this year's regular season, but there are some guys in next year's receiving class. And actually,
Mhm.
I think the Bills are probably going to take one in the first couple rounds again
That'd be
just to keep
nice.
adding. Because obviously MVS isn't a long-term option on a 1-year deal, and you still need depth. And Samuel is more like a 3-year deal, so you kind of have to plan for the future. And then next year is Shakir's contract year. So yeah, definitely I think that's an equation. But let's move on to our next quick
Mhm.
take.
Yes, and the next quick take, Paul, you had originally said to give it to me, and I will in fact take this quick take because this one speaks in volumes to me. So who will be QB1 for the Steelers week 1? Russell Wilson or Justin Fields? Well, we already pretty much have an idea on who QB1 in Pittsburgh will be, and that will be Russell Wilson. And that's something that even if they hadn't said said it, officially. I feel like that's the way Mike Tomlin would have most likely taken the direction of the football team. They would have just straight up said, "All right, Russell Wilson, you're going to be quarterback one. You're going to be throwing to a bunch of random guys and George Pickens and oh wait, no, Pat Fryermuth is not a random guy. So George Pickens, Pat Fryermuth, and then a bunch of random Walmart employees at the end of the day. And you will have Najee Harris in the backfield to do something, I guess. I don't know. Their run game has been very, very poor. What are they going to do? Put Justin Fields at running back? I mean, they already
Well, he might return kicks, right?
yeah, that I was about to say that. They already said that he was going to return kicks. But no, if you're a Steelers fan, I apologize because you have Arthur Smith as your offensive coordinator. You've somehow
I forgot
managed
about that.
you've somehow managed to take a step backwards. We all
Well,
thought Matt Canada was going
you,
to be
you
bad, and
missed.
he was bad.
Well, Connor, you didn't hear the report earlier from
What
is it
report?
Mark Caboli? Is that
Uh-oh.
the beat writer? He said like report that the Pittsburgh players are loving this new Arthur Smith offense.
Oh.
Hmm.
What? Yeah, the third stringers and the fourth stringers who Arthur Smith is going to prioritize over the top players? Let's be
Well,
completely
you
honest with
just know
ourselves.
they brought back Cordero Patterson for him to take all the
Oh,
touches.
yep,
But
yep.
I mean, it already speaks volume that they didn't pick up Najee's fifth-year option, and I'm
Mhm.
not a big Najee fan myself, as I think Paul knows.
I wasn't
Mhm.
either. Not when he was drafted that night. You drafted a running back when you had a lot more pressing
Yeah,
needs. You
and I
needed
feel like
O-line
he hasn't
desperately.
really lived up to his billing as a first round pick. Like
Yeah.
he's been all right. Like yeah, he's had 1,000 years, and yeah, I guess you could say they've had a limited off passing offense, and their O line hasn't been the greatest. I don't know. I just feel like he's
Mhm.
not the greatest. But let's
He's
move
not.
on to the next topic.
All right. And actually, Paul, if you want to segue into this one, this was your trivia question.
It is.
So, take it from here, sir.
So trivia is always a fun time here as I try to stump
For
you
sure.
guys every week. But I think this week might be a little easier one as we get back into the swing of things. But which team has the most week one wins in the NFL?
Oh, oh,
Ooh.
oh
Ever?
boy.
Yeah. Like in the history of the NFL.
Um
This has to be like the Packers or the Bears or one of those 2 teams
yeah,
that's
one of
been
those
around for eons.
legacy teams. I know the Giants just turned 100, so I'll guess the Giants since they've been around forever. Like they've had probably the most week one games.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm just gonna stick with my guns earlier and just say Chicago. I feel like it's one
Connor,
of the
you're in the right division.
oh, so it's
It's
the Packers.
So it is Green Bay.
it is Green Bay.
It's
I
funny,
had a
he said it the first time.
I did. I really did. So
He got close,
I
but
claim it. I claim it.
almost. No,
Green Bay has the
no.
most wins, week one wins in NFL history.
No,
How
you
So
many do they
stop
that's
that
got?
bit. I'm claiming it.
51.
Wow. 51 wins in week 1 and a lot more to come with Jordan Love at starting quarterback. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
So
that's in the help with Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is actually in the top 5 and is the only active quarterback right now that has the most week one
Interesting.
wins.
oh, of
Well,
course he is. That's just Aaron
technically, he
Rodgers.
got a week one win last year after playing 4 snaps. But
Haha.
he'll have to play San Fran this year. So I'm actually looking forward to that. And I guess we'll get
Mhm.
more into the schedule later. But let's move on to our Bills topics. And the first one is definitely something we've addressed a lot. But
Ooh.
since our last show, the
Yeah.
Bills have signed Marquez Valdez Scantling to go on top of, the great room of Chase Claypool.
Mhm.
They did get rid of Quintez Cephas, so you have to
Yeah.
eliminate him, but you also got KJ Hamler, of course, Khalil Shakir, obviously, and then Matt Collins,
Mhm.
Curtis Samuel. and Justin Shorter, Terrell Shavers, and of course Keon Coleman to round that out. So
The
you
GOAT?
got other guys like Xavier Johnson. I think is it Brian Thompson? Who is he still on the team?
I don't
I
think
know
Wow.
so.
there was like something like 13 receivers. But
Oh,
that leads to the
Yeah, the Bills
question.
have a pretty good amount.
yeah,
That
actually,
leads to the
before you
question.
go on, Ben, I did want to remind both of you about the news that broke a little while before the show started. Wide receiver Justin Jefferson, who has been in talks with the Vikings regarding a contract extension, was not spotted at the team's training facility today for the start of organized team activities, per
All right,
sources.
all right.
So, yeah, I'm just
So we're
trying to
gonna get
let you.
back to the regular scheduled program and ignore Connor's fantasies
Hey now,
because
June 1st is coming, and we're getting an extra $15 million come June
no,
1st.
we're getting 10 million.
Oh, okay, 10 million. We're still
So I
getting
mean it's
increase
pretty
in cap
good,
space.
but that still is
Ben,
a
let
good
me co-
tie into our question. Did the Bills do enough at the wide receiver position? I
Yes,
mean,
once we get Justin Jefferson. All right, but anyway, if
without
you want,
Justin Jefferson, though, before
yeah,
Justin Jefferson, do you think Bean did enough? And I mean, if you listen to um the Chris Long podcast, it sounds like Bean is pretty satisfied with the pass catchers
mhm.
as a whole, including, of course, Dawson Knox, James Cook,
Oh
and
yeah,
Dalton Kincaid to go with the group of
hmm
wide receivers. But I mean,
that
he
right there
spoke
is why I'd
highly of
be satisfied.
he
Right
spoke
there.
highly of Curtis Samuel, who
Mhm,
he was in Carolina when Samuel was drafted. And Samuel does have decent production, like 3 years with about 600 plus. I think he has 1 year with about 800 to 850, maybe it was about 820, whatever it was in 2020. But I mean, Samuel has been productive. And then we got the GOAT, Khalil Shakir, and the other GOAT, Keon Coleman. I mean,
mhm. I
those are
love
two
Keon.
receivers. I mean, and even Shakir last year proved to be a reliable number two without Gabe Davis in the playoffs. I know people can talk about, well, you lost Gabe Davis and Diggs. We didn't have Gabe Davis in the playoffs because he got hurt week
Mhm.
18 in Miami. And actually, Josh Allen didn't. It's funny enough, he did not have a single interception after losing Gabe Davis in the first half
Mhm.
of that Miami game.
Interesting, isn't it? How
It
things
is
turn
very
out.
interesting, and actually, like 10 of Josh's picks were when targeting Gabe, and now we're replacing Gabe with a receiver with better hands, who's more physical at the catch point. And I think Shakir is still improving. And then you include Samuel, like it's not the flashy names, but I think when you got a guy like Joe Brady and a quarterback like Josh, you're almost more dangerous when you don't know who he's
Mhm.
going to target on any given play. And then
Mhm.
Dalton Kincaid is just set to absolutely go nuclear this season. Like
Oh
I'll
yes.
say it right now. If you don't have stock in Kincaid, you got to get it right now in fantasy or whatever. His cards, like he's about to go absolutely nuclear. I'm saying 1,000 yard season at the minimum, maybe even more.
Mhm.
And I
Oh,
think
that's
Keon
that's so
could have
exciting.
could have very good numbers as a rookie. I don't know if he quite gets to 1,000, but
No,
I
he'll
think
get
he
to
gets.
1,000.
Yeah, I think he'll get at least 800 to 900 at the minimum.
Yeah,
But
I am on the train of Keon Coleman having a 1,000-yard rookie season, and that's just because
and
of who's
not
throwing
only
him the
that, can we
football.
talk about the speed the Bills have at the receiver room, which they didn't have the last 2 years, quite frankly, at the 1 and 2. Diggs is a 4.47, I believe, and he showed last year that I think he lost. It may not have been a huge step, but I think he lost a little bit of top end speed as seen from, some of his routes and his downfield plays. He definitely didn't connect with as many deep balls as he did in prior years. And Gabe Davis is like a 4.5 guy. And I know McKenzie is like 4.4s, but he doesn't really have reliable hands, and he's like 5'8". So now you add MVS, who I know he hasn't had the most reliable hands at times, but when the games have mattered,
Yeah,
MVS MVS has zero playoff drops in his career. So when the games count, he actually doesn't drop the ball, opposed to I guess we won't mention him because,
yeah, please don't. I don't want to. I don't want to hear it, Ben. You're gonna trigger me. Stop.
I was just about to hit on that point because I was just doing some quick lookups on like drop percentages on
sure.
Keon, Shakir, and Samuel. One thing the Bills have gotten better at the wide receiver position that they were bad last year was the drops. Drops last year were a big concern of the Bills last year. And then this year, they got rid of all the drops. They decided to go get Curtis Samuel, who only had 2 drops last year,
Right.
in
I think
23.
that's what Keon had in college, or maybe 3, but he had a very, low
Hey,
Shakir
drop
didn't even ha
percentage
hold
as
on.
well.
Hold on,
Shakir
y'all.
only ha
Y'all, I just saw some interesting news. It just broke literally a minute ago. After 9 NFL seasons, Devontae Parker has decided to retire.
Johnny Wilson forced him to retire.
Yeah,
Wow.
wouldn't we like to think of it that way, man? Yeah, Johnny Wilson forced Devontae Parker to retire. But as much as he looked forward to his time with the Eagles, Parker decided that the time had come to spend more time with his family that includes his 4 children, per Adam Schefter. Parker finished his NFL career with 369 catches for 5,266 yards and 27 receiving touchdowns. Let us never forget 2019 Devontae Parker and just how much of a warrior that man was, even though that Dolphins team was garbage by design because they wanted Tua.
They did.
Yeah, talk about no separation. That's Devontae Parker.
But he gave something for the people down here in South Florida to hang their hats on during 2019 when they went 5-11. But I just had to interject with that because that was pretty interesting news. I'm sure you guys would appreciate. Now,
And speaking of a Dolphins receiver, someone we didn't even mention is another former Dolphins receiver, Mac Hollins, who
yeah, right.
in 2022 he had 57 catches for 690 receiving yards. And I'm not saying he's going to replicate those numbers, but he's proven he can be a reliable option. And he's a big target in the red zone, can block, and can even give you some after catch, you know.
Hmm.
So,
He's a massive
and
dude. I mean, it
it's
was,
interesting. I guess our last point when talking about did the Bills do enough in the receiver room, because I think you got to
have
give
room
it
for
until
improvement.
there is
Like,
definitely room for improvement. But here's the thing: you got a lot of different skill sets that you maybe
mhm,
didn't necessarily have last season and the season before. You have a guy who could truly
Hmm.
take the top off the defense, who's a big vertical deep threat, which is
right.
a player Josh has never really played with, a guy
Hmm.
who's 6'3" with 4.3 speed. Davis, he was a decent deep threat, but he's a mid 4.5s guy. So
Mhm,
MVS in that aspect is an upgrade from Davis, and he adds a different element to this offense that we didn't have. And then in both, I would say both Coleman and Hollins, you got two guys who are big and physical at the catch point, who can really win 50-50 balls and be red zone matchup nightmares. Outside of Dawson Knox, I don't think Allen has really had a weapon like that,
right.
not especially at the wide receiver position. I mean, Diggs has had his moments with winning 50-50 situations, but he recent at least not in 2023. He wasn't a guy that Josh could just throw it up to and he was getting the ball. And Gabe Davis definitely wasn't that. And then you have Shakir, who could win underneath and play outside and inside. Samuel, you can move from the backfield, move him outside and inside, use him on gadget plays. He
Mm-hmm.
can win on almost any route, as shown as his route win rate, which you can just look at the numbers. But anyways, my point is, I think the Bills have a very diverse receiver room compared to past years, and
Oh
it
yeah,
lacks
for
the
sure.
top end talent. But there are guys who are definitely number twos. I mean, they probably have 4 receivers who are number 2 to 3s in the NFL.
Mhm.
See,
Maybe not a clear cut number 1,
you
but
don't
then
need a clear cut number one
you
in
have
this offense.
you
Not
have
with Josh Allen as your
exactly.
starting quarterback. It's
And
just like how the
you
Chiefs
got
are. You don't
You
need.
have Dalton Kincaid.
Mhm,
I think the most interesting thing will be who wins that 6th wide receiver spot, because
Mhm.
it's pretty clear. You look at the
not Chase
incentives
Claypool.
and well, we're gonna get to him, but you look at the incentives given to MVS, and given the fact that there was other teams competing for him, it seemed like Allen wanted MVS, and it's still up to him to make the team.
Mhm.
But I would
He'll
assume
make it.
MVS makes a team. He's a good player. He
Yeah, he is.
started on the 2-time Super Bowl champs. Um, I would assume, or Samuel's a lock, as well as Shakir
Oh,
and
of course.
Coleman.
Duh.
Collins is a high probability,
Mhm.
unless, here's a big caveat, Chase Claypool plays like 2020 Chase Claypool.
Good
And
luck with
then
that.
that adds a really different dynamic to the offense. But that's really, it depends on what version Chase Claypool the Bills get.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
you know how
I'm
you
not
bring back
saying we're
2020
gonna
Chase
get.
Claypool? You don't have anything on the Bills roster right now or in the Bills coaching staff that can bring back 2020 Chase Claypool. You know what brings back 2020 Chase Claypool? Mike Tomlin. We don't have Mike Tomlin. We have Sean
Well,
McDermott.
that's the thing. But McDermott and Tomlin are very close friends and
True.
have similar philosophies. So
True. I
maybe
was
it's
going to say that.
possible. I mean, for say what you want about Diggs or whatever, McDermott did a really good job of keeping Diggs to be bought in for the time he was here in
Mhm.
Buffalo and not being a major distraction or locker room
Mhm.
cancer.
Yeah,
Maybe he was behind the scenes, but Coach McDermott did a good job of really keeping it together. So I mean, I don't think it's
Mhm.
impossible to think that maybe McDermott could do it, but I think a bigger question is what shape is Chase Claypool in? Because if he's last year's Chase Claypool, which was effectively that 2018 Calvin Benjamin
Yep.
Popeye biscuit meme, where
Yep.
he was just a big, slow receiver who was way overweight, then
And bro
yeah,
ran the wrong route
he's
to
got
cost the Dolphins the
I mean,
division.
it's not even he ran the wrong route. It was a poorly thrown ball, and Taylor Rapp just read it perfectly. Read it like a book. Like
Mhm.
there really wasn't much more that Claypool needed to do. It was just wasn't a great pass, and Rapp beat him to the spot. But anyways, I mean, I don't have high expectations, but I mean, if you look at the wide receiver 6 spot, you have Claypool, you have Hamler, who is a former second round pick, and then you have Tyrell Shavers and Justin Shorter, who are actually kind of very similar type players. They're
Mhm.
more like special teams aces right now that are bigger project wide receivers. I mean, Shorter was a 5th-round pick, but you can argue that Shavers may have actually been better
Mhm.
last year in the preseason, and they did hold on to Shavers, to try to develop. So, I mean, both Shavers and Shorter were high recruits out of high
Mhm.
school, and both really, I mean, they both had to transfer out in college from their original schools. They both didn't really have great receiving production, and The only difference was the Bills used a 5th-round pick on Justin Shorter. But when you look at the
Mhm.
wide receiver 6 spot, I mean, you're going to probably want a more of a special teams focused player. Although Matt Collins is a very good special teamer. So you could almost just Russ or Hollins just for special teams. And then if you want, maybe you want more speed with KJ Hamler. I mean, you still have Isabella to throw in the equation too, and I'm a
Oh,
big
yeah, I forgot
Isabella
about
guy.
oh, yeah,
I
I forgot about
mean,
him.
you could go. It's funny. I mean, the Bills. Yes, at number one, it's not what it was the last 4 years. But take away Stephon Diggs, and you can go like number
Please.
2 all the way down to wide receiver, like 8 on the depth chart. Obviously, they're not keeping 8, but if you put them head to head with any of the last 4 or 5 years, like they're arguably just as good, if not better, at the 2 through 8. And obviously, you're not keeping 8, but that just shows the quality of depth they have right now. And I mean, I think it's safe to say a couple guys make the practice squad, but who would you take as your wide receiver 6 right now?
Who would All right, you know
Oh,
what? This is gonna be a very interesting question that you have brought up to the class, Ben, but my wide receiver 6, shoot, anybody but Chase Claypool. You know what? I'm just gonna answer it like that.
Is
Anybody
that
but
just
Chase
your
Claypool.
agenda? Now I want Chase Claypool to
Yes.
make the
No,
roster.
listen. This is
Look, he was
why
good
I
in
am
2020 and 2021
no, no, no,
when
no,
he
no.
had a Hall
Listen,
of Fame quarterback.
listen. Yes, he had the
Is Ben
declining corpse of
Roethlisberger
Ben
not a
Roethlisberger.
Hall of Famer?
Yes, he is.
And is Josh Allen not a future Hall of Famer?
We already know this. But listen, this
So
is
you don't
why.
think that Joe Brady and Allen and Claypool, if Claypool's bought in, because this is realistically Chase Claypool's last shot. If he doesn't make it with Allen and Buffalo, he's going to the CFL. Let's be honest, because he was close to signing before the Bills ended up, ultimately signing him. So this is
No,
really
this
his last shot in the NFL, really.
of course.
He
But
has the talent and the physical tools. Like, I mean, you just look at Justin Shorter, who ultimately to me was just like a wasted pick. Like, I think at Chase Claypool, you have some quality depth too from a guy who's actually produced in the NFL.
okay. So
if
here's
you
the
look
thing
at the
that I need
Bills
to
right
bring up.
now in that wide receiver room, I mean, it seems like right, like if you think about it right now and just based off what Bean has been talking about, I think right now KJ Hamler is leading the way. Just the way people are speaking about him. He's
That's fair.
fast. It seems like strictly based off that it seems like it's KJ Hamler. But could Chase Claypool possibly take that spot away from him? It just really depends what he does at camp and what he
Yeah,
does
and
at
Hamler
OTAs.
does need to stay healthy because he has not been
Right.
healthy
Yeah,
like any of the last 3 seasons. So I
And
guess
it
it's a
could
big
just come
wild
down
card.
straight down to health. Like who can
exactly.
stay
I
healthy for us,
mean,
for
Justin
18 weeks?
Shorter, I will say, has been putting in work along with Andy Isabella. So I mean, that could
Agreed.
actually maybe that's how the competition breaks. And Chase Claypool is strictly a camp body. Who knows?
Possibly.
I
But
don't. I don't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I think if you want someone that's proven, I think for the wide receiver 6 spot, give it to Chase Claypool, and you put Hamler and
oh,
Hamler and Shavers on the practice squad. You ship Justin Shorter to the moon because that was
why?
just
Why to the
because
moon? Why to the moon? Send him to Tampa
He just
Bay. Send him
hasn't
to
been able
Tampa
to
Bay
stay
so they can
healthy.
make good use
Like
of him.
every time he gets there,
yeah.
every time he gets
Well,
a chance, it's
if you
always
can include him in our package to acquire Chris Godwin, then
You mean
I will
Justin
take that.
Jefferson? We'll just send him to Minnesota. Anyway, I need to bring this up because this is why my anti-Claypool agenda exists. I want you to remember, look at the records of every team that has signed Chase Claypool since his time in Pittsburgh. Look at Chicago. They immediately went into the drink. Look at what happened to Miami
Well,
the minute that they signed
I got a
Chase
rebuttal
Claypool.
for that.
They were the 1 seed, and then they immediately went into the tank. I
So
don't want that happening to the
How did
Bills.
Miami season end the year before they had Chase Claypool?
Bef- the okay, so the year before they had Chase Claypool,
In December when they lost like all of their
they went,
games and it went
yeah,
down the tank. Did the
yes,
same thing not happen basically back to back years with and without Chase Claypool?
yes, but at least the second time they had a
And
better
did the
excuse.
season
They lost Chase
before
Claypool.
Did the season before Tua not go to Tennessee with the season on the line and piss down his legs completely in embarrassing fashion and got outgunned by Ryan Tannehill after the Dolphins? I'll give them credit. They had an impressive stretch of win of games in that 2021 season after starting what it was like 2-7 or something like that. They
Uh,
basically put
1 and
themselves
7,
in
but yes.
they put him they put themselves in position to almost get a win and in, and they lost in embarrassing fashion. The year before, to his rookie season in Buffalo. Must I remind you, week I think it was 17 because I think it was still 17 games at the time, or 16, sorry. Week
Which one?
17 in Buffalo, 2020. The Bills
Oh,
benched Josh Allen, and the
Yeah.
game was close at halftime. And then Matt Barkley and
Yep.
a rookie Gabe Davis decided to
56 to
look.
26 final. I
Yeah,
remember
they
that all too
decided
well.
to look like prime Brady and Randy Moss. So my point is, every year, regardless if there's Chase Claypool or not on the roster, the Dolphins have came up short when it
I'm
mattered
not just
most.
I'm not just talking about Miami. I'm talking about
Oh,
Chicago.
okay, but
Look at Chicago
how did
after
Chicago? I guess
Well,
you can make
Chicago
an
had
argument.
nobody on their team really.
Chicago did improve to an extent
yeah, by
after
letting him
trading
go.
him after trading him, but you also have to look at the variables. Their defense never was healthy the first half of the season, and then after they traded Claypool, they acquired Montez Sweat. So like that was a pretty decent acquisition. And like Paul mentioned, the year before, like that Claypool trade, obviously it didn't work. But at the end of the day, you know what was proven, regardless of Claypool worked in Chicago or not, that Justin Fields was not the guy in Chicago. So
Never
Mhm.
was.
exactly. So I don't know if you can pin that on Claypool when Fields wasn't that guy. They
See,
tried to bring in Claypool. They tried to bring him in to help Fields, but I mean, look at that receiving room, how it was constructed. You
mhm.
had, who was it? Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet.
I said
Uh,
receiver room. You want to talk
yeah,
about bad receiver rooms? Darnell Mooney. Can you name any of the other receivers Chicago had besides Darnell Mooney and
no,
Chase Claypool?
no, you really
Yeah.
can't. But
So I
I
think
do
that
want to
says
say
a
this.
lot at the end of
It
the
does.
day. Like, you need, I mean, regardless if Claypool was good or not, like Fields didn't have a ton of weapons around him. I think they put too much faith in Claypool, which you can, I mean, the Bills, it's a low risk investment. They did even spend a 6th round pick, which I think Miami did. The Bears, they sent pick 33 for that, which was just
Oh yeah, it was hilarious.
malpractice of the greatest extent. But
Mhm.
either way, I mean, the Bills, all they did was it was a vet min deal. Like, I think it's a win-win. Like, if he's good, he's good. If he's bad, he doesn't make the team. But
See,
I've seen him produce in the NFL. Justin Shorter, I have not. Hamler to a
Mhm.
limited extent. Hollins, I have too. So I think Hollins beats out Claypool.
oh
But
yeah, for sure.
it's interesting though because Claypool and Hollins almost have a similar skill set. So what happens if Claypool beats him in camp? I mean, I know Hollins is a better special teamer, so that might give Mac the edge. But
Mhm.
I guess we'll move on quickly to
Yeah, we have a lot of other
OTAs.
topic. Yeah, we have a lot of other
Yeah,
topics to get to, and Ben, you're starting to ramble. You're like me. You get
I
on a
mean
tangent and you don't shut up.
this receiver topic is definitely interesting, but I mean,
Of course.
we'll still get into it more because whether the Bills
There's
make a
still an
move or
entire
not,
what 6 months.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I guess that's it could roll into our next question. I mean, what do you guys think is the biggest priority for the Bills during OTAs? I'll go with the opposite side of the ball. I think
Oh,
it's another
okay.
outside cornerback. Um,
Mhm.
they lost Dane Jackson. They didn't really add it. Oh, they lost Trey White too. So after losing White and Jackson, they didn't really do anything to address the outside, room. They did draft Daquan Hardy, but he's 5'8". He'll be Teron Johnson's primary backup. So unless they're moving Johnson to the outside, which they're not, we're gonna need another backup corner in case Benford
Mhm.
or Douglas go
Mhm.
down. And we've
Oh, yeah.
seen Benford go down every season, unfortunately. And Douglas, he got hurt last season too. So I know you're not the biggest Kyer Elam fan either, Connor.
I'm
So
not. I'm not. Don't bring that name up. Stop it. I wanted
even
him
though he
traded.
has, even though he has corralled Tyreek Hill on like 3 separate occasions, including the playoffs,
I'm down for
um,
that. Anything
but
for that. But
but
you know
here's the
what?
thing: after Elam, you don't really have anyone in that cornerback room, unless you want to bring back Cam Lewis. But we all saw what Cam Lewis could do on that Justin Jefferson play when Jefferson just completely
Mhm.
snatched his soul, basically. So I
Yeah.
think you need to get another outside corner.
Oh, yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm definitely on that train as
I know
well.
you are because you wanted to get rid of Elam, so you knew that room needed to be addressed.
Not only that, but I am on the opinion that we really need to bolster depth at this position because of what you just said about Christian Benford. You'd hate it if Teron Johnson went down, then you'd hate it if Benford went down. The thing that's been killing the Bills in the past few years is
Is
a lack
injuries.
is injuries at the worst possible
Mhm.
times. You
Yes.
need to build the key position groups with as much depth as possible going into January. And
And
the
that's what they
important
did on the
thing
O line. They just
exactly. You need to do that on the O line, but you need to do that on the cornerback room. You need to also make sure that you get that kind of depth in the linebacker position. We
well, it
saw what
seems like
happened
they
to
kind of
Miami
yeah, I
when
mean
that happened, and they lost all their
I
linebackers.
mean,
They
we
had to
saw what happened
literally
to the
Mhm.
Bills last year.
oh, yeah.
We had to
We had to
call um
what was his name? The guy
AJ
out
Klein.
of, like, Key West. Yeah,
yes.
AJ Klein out of
We had
Key
to
West
yeah,
practically.
we had to call AJ Klein from Key West.
Unbelievable. Like, that
Bernard,
you're cooked when
not
that
only were
happens.
Bernard and Milano were out, but we also lost um
Yeah, I feel bad too.
Balin Spector in Miami. So
I was
Yep.
hate watching that playoff game because of obviously I didn't want to see Pittsburgh get any farther in the playoffs, and of course I started watching. The minute I started watching is when Bernard got hurt.
yeah.
So I hate that. But anyway, let's keep going because
Really quick, I
we have a
think
lot of what,
they
Paul?
I think we kind of missed on one interesting position.
What?
Who's going to start next to Taylor Rapp? You know,
Oh,
there's Damar Hamlin, Cole Bishop. I mean, Mike Edwards. Like
Does Taylor Rapp
it's
even start? That's my
like the
question because
safety clearly
I know Rapp
ish.
is kind of getting starting ish money, but you already mentioned Mike Edwards. He has
Mhm.
experience on not only one but two Super Bowl winning teams. And he can kind of play that deep safety, which Hyde was so good at in his heyday. But last year we kind of saw his decline, unfortunately. So
hmm
I'm almost guaranteeing that Edwards is going to start, and
I think so.
I think
I'm
I
on board with
think
that.
Rapp may start the season just because he has the experience and knows the defense,
Oh
and
yeah.
he'll be mentoring Bishop. But I think by the end of the season and by the playoffs, Bishop and Edwards are going to be your two primary safeties.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely think so. I would love to get Cole Bishop to basically be a lock to start right away. I just love Cole Bishop. Yeah, I mean, you guys know how
I
much
Yeah,
think
I
I
Cole
mean,
was
if you
Bishop
had to name your
has
two
the
starting
starting
safeties, would
position
it be
like
Rapp and
easily.
Bishop or Rapp and
yes,
Edwards, Connor?
rapid at this point. Okay. So just
And
to
there's
start,
another interesting name to throw in there. Um, is it D. Delaney,
yes,
Yes.
that
another
guy.
former
Yeah. So
Buccaneer?
here's the thing about D. Delaney, and this is coming from somebody who watches a lot of Buccaneers games because I know plenty of people down in that area. D. Delaney was signed to Tampa Bay to be depth going into the playoffs, and he did very, very well in his limited span, and that's exactly why he's here in Buffalo. I think that he's going to be a great addition, coming down to the wire in the playoffs, and he's actually pretty good. Like for a guy that the Bills are signing for depth, he is actually a really good player. I loved the signing when it happened. But I think that is it's stuff to watch moving forward. Obviously, we still have like 6 months before we get to anything else relating to the Bills. Obviously, we have OTAs, we'll have mini camp soon, and then we'll have the preseason, and then finally it'll be time for football. But I do want to start wrapping up by getting to our final set of takes. And I am going to start off this one because I don't know why Paul is obsessed with the Steelers takes today because he's got
Well,
two
He's a
of them.
closet Steelers fan, it seems like.
Yeah, he is a
I am not.
closeted
I mean,
Steelers fan.
do
Both
you?
of you are.
Definitely
I
not
could get
me.
us into this topic because I feel like this is a fascinating topic
I think
because it's
I
one of
think
those weird
Well,
everybody
stats.
you go first, Connor, and then I'll
I
give
think
my response.
everybody on this show is a closeted Steelers fan. You
Except me.
no, especially you. You're more
All
of a
right, let's just
closeted.
go.
All right. So, this topic, we're going to start on this one and we're going to make this one quick because we got two more that we really do want to discuss. I really want to get into these. Will Mike Tomlin have his first losing season as a Steelers head coach? That answer is no. And here's why the answer is no. If Mike Tomlin had
Death,
last
taxes,
year's
and Mike
team,
Tomlin winning seasons.
yes, last year's Steelers team should not have finished 10-7. No
No.
way. Not with Kenny Pickett at quarterback and not with Mitch Trubisky
I
starting at
mean,
quarterback, too.
here's the thing, if you could have gone if you survived 2 seasons of Kenny Pickett without having a losing season, and then
Mhm.
even the Duck Hodges season when Big Ben went down,
Don't remind me of that season.
yeah,
I'm still triggered.
you're and now you have a much more stable quarterback room, and
Mhm.
you had a
You
great
have
draft.
Russell
Yes, you
Wilson.
have a tough division, but you have still actually performed very well against your division
Yep.
opponents.
You have
So,
TJ Watt on your team. You
yeah,
cannot forget that you
I'm
have
gonna
the
say
best
a
defensive player in
resounding
football.
no. They're not gonna have their
Mhm.
first losing season. Paul's probably gonna
Don't
be
you
the
dare.
devil's advocate because
Yeah.
he always is. I can just see him over there.
Okay, I want to give you their schedule from
Okay.
week 11 on and
All
see
right.
if this
I mean,
changes.
you say this every year with the schedule when it comes
Oh,
out. It was tough last year. They got to go to Seattle, who is a playoff team, right? They
but
win
this
Actually,
in
is different.
Seattle.
This is you're playing all your divisional games
oh,
week
shoot.
11 after. So that means you're playing. I know
They're
they're in
built for their
Pittsburgh and they're
divisional
immune to the
game,
cold,
though.
but
They perform well in
AFC
those
North
AFC North
football.
games.
Yep. And that's because of Mike Tomlin.
They're built for that AFC North
Yeah.
grinding
And
out
and
type of
that's
games.
literally that's how they've always been for years. That's how Mike
Those
Tomlin.
games are defensive battles,
Yep.
control possession, run the ball, and that's what they're
Mhm.
gonna do with Arthur Smith.
That's been Mike
I
And
Tomlin.
think
their
there's a
He
good
got
defense
hired.
chance.
didn't get any worse for sure.
I think there's a
Mhm.
good
I mean,
chance
they actually
they could
added
be
Patrick
above
Queen.
500 and go 9-8, but there's a good chance that record can flip and go 8-9. It just
Yeah,
depends
it's possible.
how they
You're
do
right.
in the final stretch
Anything's a
of the
I
season.
guess,
possibility.
and before we move on to our next take, you obviously had the variable. Either Russ or Fields, whoever is under center by the end of the season, both of them, whoever's under center has to perform. So that's a big
Mhm.
contingency factor too. They
Absolutely.
however bad Pickett was and however bad Rudolph was they still won those games, and Fields
Hey,
and Wilson are gonna have to go out and do it. But let's get to our
yep.
next topic.
Hey, Steelers legend Mason Rudolph. He actually got them to the playoffs. Do not diss this man and his greatness. But we are going to move on to the next topic. As you said, Ben, will having a week 12 bye hurt or help the Bills? I am literally just,
It's gonna help the Bills for sure.
yeah, I
Mhm.
was just
You look
doing
at
this right here.
if you
Just,
look at the history of
oh
the
man.
NFL, I don't think a team with a bye before it's either week 7 or week 6 has ever won a Super Bowl. So, just
Late
looking at
buys are the best
if
buys.
you look at the historical precedent, and then if you look at the Bills last season, that late bye was very important at the end of the year, especially with the amount
Mhm,
of injuries and everything. And that after the bye, they only lost one game the rest of the season, which was obviously that playoff game against Kansas City, but they didn't lose in the regular season after the bye last year. And historically, they've been very excellent out
mhm.
of the bye under Sean McDermott. Um,
Absolutely.
and then as far as the schedule goes, I mean, I think it's balanced. Like they play some tough teams at the end of the year, but you get that bye, you know, right. Is that after the Chiefs game, I believe,
So
Let me
they
is
go
the
check.
Chiefs
bye?
by 49ers.
Yeah, so perfect. So
Yep.
right, I
Just
mean,
like
you
they did last
play.
year, Philly
So I
by
mean, you
Chiefs.
have a semi-difficult stretch between going to Seattle, playing Miami, Indy, and then the Chiefs, and then you have a bye, and then
Mhm,
you host the 49ers for Sunday Night Football, go to LA, play the Lions,
mhm.
the Patriots, Jets, and
Mhm.
Patriots. I mean, that's no
Yes.
easy schedule, but if you're
Mixing the
well
Lions in there
rested,
too.
it's yeah, I said the Lions.
I
Oh,
just
okay.
also like to point out
It's
that I called out
between
that,
the Rams, Niners, Jets, 49ers, Patriots twice, and Lions. I mean, those are teams that, yes, they all can beat you, but I think after a
mhm,
bye, if you're healthy, those are manageable games to what is that? One, two,
absolutely.
that's 6 games. I mean, you could potentially go 5-1, maybe, I mean, maybe 6-0. I mean, historically, obviously the hardest game on paper right now is a 49ers game. But if you look at how the Bills have
Absolutely.
been under McDermott after the bye, they're very good. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if they win the
Mhm.
49ers game, which is going to be the toughest, like then it's at Detroit, which obviously isn't going to be easy, or at the Rams. But I mean, I think they can win either, if not both of those games as well.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
I think
Let
this
let you
buy,
cook
like you
tonight,
said,
Ben.
Ben, is going to help them. In I think the NFL gave probably the Bills an option here where they wanted their bye because the Bills have
oh,
that
it
3 game road
definitely
trip
help
early in
help
the
them.
season, and then they probably gave them an option like,
Yeah, I
"Do you
mean that
want the buy in between there? You want it later in the year?"
that early road trip is gonna be an absolute gauntlet between
Mhm.
Ravens, Texans, and Jets, all potential playoff teams this year.
Not worried about
So
the Jets.
no,
I'm
I'm
just
not
gonna
really
say it.
too worried about. I mean, I think you can I mean, you could potentially go 2-1 or 3-0 on that road trip. I
Mhm.
mean, I guess we'll
Mhm.
just see how all those teams are
Potential,
once
yeah.
the games
Yup.
begin.
Exactly.
But I like how we
It's
have
all
the
on
late
paper.
bye.
It's all on paper right now. That's the thing I need to make sure that we're all very aware of. Everything on the schedules is all paper. You can't just go into a season and expect, oh, this team's going to be really good or that team's going to be
Sure,
really good. You have to wait and see when the games are played because not only do you have the any given Sunday diatribe, like how um, Pittsburgh lost to two win teams in back to
sure.
back weeks, but you have to also consider what will be going on when the time comes. Like,
So
you don't want to put it on anybody, but we saw what happened with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers last season. Any of these games that look like they're going to be marquee matchups could
yeah,
wind
you
up being some of the
can
worst
never
games in
yeah, you can never
existence.
tell any of the games,
Mhm.
like the San Fran game,
Oh,
right
yeah.
now, I mean, that could look completely different, but
It could be
let's
a Super Bowl
wrap up.
preview, or it could be something that resembles the 49ers
Yeah,
that we've seen in the past few years, where they've been a completely injury-riddled team, and they're gonna finish
so
toward the
let's
bottom of the league.
finish here with the biggest, schedule takeaway,
Oh, yes.
other than the NFL kind of hilariously punishing the Jets again with 1,000
Uh-huh.
early primetime games just in
Yep.
case,
Yeah.
Rodgers gets hurt at some point, but they want to get the most out of Aaron Rodgers, which is something the VP of schedule Mike North even said on record, like the Jets owe him, but the Jets kind of have some difficult stretch of games, including 3 games in 10 days to open the season. So I guess we'll kind of get the full Aaron Rodgers experience for better or for worse early on. But other than that, for me, the one game I was probably most shocked about was Gabe Davis getting a primetime game in his first game against the Bills instead of Diggs is
I love
kind
it.
of hilarious
I love it.
at the end of
I
the
love
day.
it.
Like everyone, I mean, if you could bet on schedules and what games would be prime time, I guarantee you most people would have penciled in and placed money on that Bills Texans game to be a Sunday or Monday night game. And instead,
Mhm.
it's sandwiched between 2 primetime games, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or is it
Um,
after? Is it at the tail
hang
end?
on.
Either way, there's the Ravens is a Sunday night game, the Jets is Monday night, and the
Mhm.
Texans is a 1 o'clock game.
Yes. I would also like to point out that I called it. Remember when we did the schedule prediction and I was like, "Oh, we're going to play the Dolphins, go on a bye and then play the Dolphins again." I called it, but with the Patriots. We're going to play the Patriots, the Jets, and then the Patriots again. So I just want to say I called it.
Right.
I said it. I
Except
got it right
it's
before
not
the
a
schedule
bye
was
and
even announced.
it's 3
The
divisional
schedule
opponents in a
maker
row.
the schedule makers
Close enough
heard
though.
me. They heard me on this show when I spoke that into existence. They heard me and was like, "Hey, this guy's got a good idea. We're gonna roll with this."
All right. Final
So I
takeaway,
love it.
Paul.
I
Yep.
think the biggest takeaway here, it's you know, I'm a big fan of, special event games and like,
Sure.
marquee matchups. I don't like the international games slate this year really. Other
Okay.
like
I do.
the Brazil game is good. Like that's a
Yeah.
good Friday night
That
game.
game,
Mm,
it's going to be
The
interesting.
Jets Vikings, I can get away with that, but
no.
the game in
I
Germany just doesn't
need
sit with me.
I need them
It's
to
like they
inject
just shoved it to them. It's
a
like, here,
Sam Darnold
eh,
revenge game in London directly into my
Yes.
veins.
Yes. See, okay. I like the international slate of games for one reason. You know why? The Bills don't have to play in any of them.
true.
Thank
Yes.
God. I
And
don't
the
want to see the
Jets
Bills.
do,
Yeah,
and the
and
Patriots.
the
They
Jets and
do.
Patriots both have international games, and the
Yep.
Bills don't.
Unfortunately, the Chiefs don't, but the Jags
But
have
the
two. But
Chiefs do get 3 games
at
in
this
10 days to
point,
end the season.
honestly, the Jags are probably they play better in London than they do in the US.
Yeah, I hate to tell you, but for anybody that was hoping that the Jags were going to move to London, that is not happening. From what I understand, they've reached a deal with the city to fund the new stadium, and the Jags are
Well,
not
it's
leaving
not a new
Jacksonville.
stadium. They're just like completely remodeling the current one, if I understand
Yeah.
it correctly.
They're not leaving Jacksonville from what I'm
Yes.
hearing. They are
Yes.
everybody was like, "Oh, they're gonna leave and go to London, and they're actually gonna be the
But
first NFL international
here's
team."
the thing though,
Nope.
because of and we'll wrap up right here, but because of
Yeah, I got a killer
Shad
outro for you.
Khan's connections and ties with Europe, it makes sense as to why Jacksonville being his team are essentially the guinea pig as far as experimenting in teams having back-to-back games in London, because you've heard the commissioner, he wants to not only does he want to add a team there, he wants to potentially add a division in Europe at some point, which is just absolutely wild, but I guess
Wild and
we'll
horrible,
yeah,
horrible idea.
awful.
Um, all right. So, to that end, I do have one final note about the schedule, and then we will conclude the show. So, here is the thing about the schedule. It's like I said, on paper, this is a very, very difficult schedule. You know, you have the
Mhm.
Dolphins twice, you have the Jets, Ravens, Texans, Chiefs. and then a lot of up and coming teams. There really is no true easy game on the schedule. And in my opinion, that's the best kind of schedule. The hard schedules combined with a team with no expectations can prove to be one of the most deadly forces in all of football. And no one can say, oh, they played an easy schedule. They're going to make it to the playoffs, no problem. You win 12 or 13 games with this schedule, you have a great team. And that is a team that will go far in the playoffs if they can win that many games in the regular season with this tough a schedule. Embrace the competition, Bills Mafia, because that is how you build great teams. That's how you get the cohesion together. The vibes on this team right now are very, very high. As long as
Yeah.
they're winning,
If
they
you
can
talk about
roll with this.
overall, yeah, if you just talk about overall vibes, I don't think the vibes have probably been
They
like
haven't been
this
this high
since
in a long time.
probably 2020, 2021.
They
So from
haven't been
that
this high
aspect,
in a long
it's
time.
going to be a fun and special season to kind of just see the team, from a different perspective. But
Absolutely.
that should
That
close it
all right.
out for tonight.
All right.
It does.
Ben, you have any final thoughts? Paul, you have any final thoughts?
No, other than I just need to see some Allen and Keon
Alan the
Yes.
Keon.
connection
Yes.
from
Same.
OTAs.
Same. I need it really, really badly.
They need a special. They need to make their special handshake like on the first day, like they're ready to go and like
Yeah.
here we go,
Yeah,
or like Josh Allen bringing cookies to Keon or something. Do
exactly.
something, Bills.
Yeah.
We need that content, Bills admin. I hope you're hearing me. The NFL schedule makers already heard me. I need you to hear me too, Bills admin. Get us some Josh and Keon content immediately. Give
Yes.
me the serotonin I need. But I believe that will conclude the show for the evening. Thank you guys all for watching on YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you are. Make sure you listen in to us on any of the music platforms that you prefer as well, if you prefer us in a podcast version. And thank you again. And then I believe Wednesday, we will maybe have a Connor's takes coming out if you're around, Paul. I don't know if you'll be around or not, but
Not this week. Next week. It's just
okay,
how the schedule rolls. But
okay,
we will
cool.
have a Connor. We will get a Connor stakes out within the
Yeah, I
next week
need
or
to.
so.
It's a shame it's not this week because I would definitely want to make it a little more focused about the legendary performance that's going to be going on behind me this week. And that's primarily my main focus right now. This is the first time I've actually talked ball in what feels like months because I've just been so immersed in the Indianapolis 500, and I can't wait. And like I always like to end the show, go Bills, go Kyle Larson.
Go
Go
Bills.
Bills and go Cubs too.